Hello everyone and welcome to another video here in the channel. Today we're gonna continue, of course, with our trim sheet exercise, and we're gonna go from this to this. Gonna be adding a lot of sculpted detail, a lot more complexity, and we're gonna make our trim sheet look way better. This is not the end yet. We're still gonna go through a texturing stage and the whole setup so that you can see how we can use it. I originally didn't intend this to be like jade and gold trims, but to be honest, I think it looks quite nice, so we're probably gonna be rolling with this. So if you don't want to miss the next part, make sure to subscribe here on the channel, and without anything else to add, let's jump straight into sculpting. The first thing we need to do is, of course, bring this into Zbrush, right? We're going to start with the sculpting process. So what I did right here is I just went ahead and combined all of the different trims into a single mesh so that it's a little bit easier to use. Very simple. Just grab all of the different pieces, right? And then just select, mesh, and combine. If you're doing this in Blender, I know, guys, I know that you can do this in Blender. You can do this in any other software. That's fine. We're not against any other software. You're free to follow in whatever software you need. Now, there's a cool trick that we have here inside of Maya, which is the fact that we can grab all of the different trims right here, and to keep things a little bit more organized, I'm going to go to this option. By default, this thing is set to absolute transform, but we can go to the rename option, and I'm just going to call this trim underscore and hit enter. I'm going to have to underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and there we go. So as you can see, we don't really need the plane. The plane at the back, it's just a plane. We're going to be bringing it back later to just bake everything. We don't really need to add any detail. We can always add a texture instead of substance later on. But these things right here, all of these blocks, we definitely need. So I'm just going to go File, Export Selection, and we're going to export this to the desktop for now as FBX. Inside of Zbrush, we're going to say Import. We're going to go to the desktop, and we're going to import, of course, our trims for Sculpt. There we go. And this is it. The reason why we did this as FBX is because when you do or export as an FBX, as you can see, every single element, if it has a different name, it's going to be kept as a different element. So that's what we want. So I'm going to start with this big ones right here, and the same principle that I'm going to apply with this ones is the same principle that I'm going to apply to all of them. I'm not going to record the whole process because otherwise it's going to be like a couple of hours long. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to isolate them for just a second so that we can focus only on this ones. Remember that we mentioned that whatever we do on one of these sides needs to be done on the other side as well. So we are going to have symmetry enabled with this guys right here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the Dynamesh to a high amount. I'm going to keep polish on, and I'm going to do an auto groups. Why an auto groups? Because this is going to give me a polygroup for every different element, and I'm going to hit Dynamesh. So as you can see, this is going to allow me to have Dynamesh on each specific or individual brick. We might need to do something a little bit different later on because this guy no longer matches with this guy right here. So one of the things that we can do actually is just select one of them, right, like that one that's on this side, and I'm just gonna delete it, right? I'm gonna keep it for now, but if you want, you can just delete it, and at the end, when we're finished with this one and we go back inside of Maya, we're gonna make sure that the first and the last brick are the exact same brick. Now, we're going to divide the sculpting process of these things into multiple elements. First of all, remember that since this is going to be a trim sheet, we don't want to do like extreme changes on the silhouette. If you have a very specific or very intense like crack, I imagine I do something like, I don't know, like this, right? And I have this big crack going across the little cube right here, then it's going to be very obvious. As soon as we see the trim sheet, this little detail is going to repeat pretty much all the way across. So when you're thinking about trim sheets or any sort of like modular asset, you want to keep your detail sort of like general, right? Like this means that if we're going to be adding a little bit of like wear damage, for instance, here, that's fine. We can definitely add the wear damage, but we need to make it so that it's not super unique, right? So I'm going to add a little bit more wear damage over here. Let's add maybe a little bit more wear damage over here. We can go with clay buildup, for instance. I really like clay buildup, so like blocking some initial like big cracks right here on the block. Here's a very nice technique. I'm gonna go with masking. I'm gonna change my mask lasso. I'm gonna mask a sort of like interesting faceted effect right there. Then I'm gonna invert the mask right here. And what we can do is with just W, for instance, we can just push this in a little bit. See that? So that generates a little bit of an interesting fragment, sort of like a facet that we can use. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing immediately is that we're working with way too few polygons. So I'm gonna increase the resolution and Dynamesh again. There you go, much better. We're only 500,000 polygons, and that's going to be like more than enough for now. I'm going to use clay buildup again, and now it's all about polishing, right? So there are a couple of brushes that I really like using when I'm doing this sort of like environment stuff. We've already have a video about this. Alan is going to help us here with a little thumbnail in case you want to look it up, which is the how to sculpt rocks. But the first one is, of course, the ore brushes. So the ore brushes, even though we're usually use them for stylized stuff, they can actually be used for this kind of stuff as well. Because, for instance, this orb flatten edge, which I love that brush, will try to, well, as the name implies, flatten the edge. It's kind of like a mix between a trim brush and a polish brush, because it will will trim, or it will sort of like flatten and get you like some very nice clean angles, but at the same time it will try to protect the angles that we already have. Now be very careful here. At this point, this would be one of those points where I might remove the polish option, because when we Dynamesh, the polish option tends to soften things a little bit too much. So in this particular case, I think we no longer need it. I'm gonna be adding this, and it's this sort of like the chip damage that we want to add. We always need to sort of like go outside of our sort of like comfort zone, right? Like we need to sort of like zoom out and see how the detail is looking in regards to other elements. For instance, I really like the crack that we have right there, but then this area sort of like looks a little bit empty. So I'm going to do something similar there. I'm just going to grab a little crack there and again, push this back. Going to give me a different type of effect. And we can go, for instance, with, I don't know, clay buildup. And maybe we want to have a little bit of a less intense ramp over on this area. Go back to trim dynamic and just clean that facet off. Go to the orb edges and as well, just go there and start adding a little bit more detail. Whenever we're doing this sort of like rock stuff, you definitely want to have a high amount of poly count. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit difficult. Even right now, I think we can increase this a little bit more. And this is a common issue with Dynamesh. When we're working with Dynamesh, sometimes because of the scale that we're working on, remember, we're working in real world scale. See this? I'm at 2000 resolution and I'm not even going above 1.5 million points. So if I want more, I need to push my Dynamesh higher, but maybe I don't want to do that because it becomes a little bit difficult to work. This is where we can use a specific plugin here inside of Zbrush. It's called Scale Master. So Scale Master has a specific feature that is really good, which is this one right here, which is called Zbrush Scale Unify. So what this will do is it will go through all of the subtools and it will resize your whole scene so that it's still like real world, but it will change it so that it matches the size that we needed to have here inside of Zbrush. So now I can go back to like 1K resolution right there. Let's just do any like quick change here, Dynamesh, and as you can see, even at just 1K, we're already at 500,000 polygons. So we're not gonna need so many like points at the end to get to the resolution that we need. So that like Zbrush Scale Unify, really good way to get a nice result. Now let me show you another very cool little like a brush that we have here inside of Zbrush. It's a little bit hidden, but it's really good for this sort of like rock work. It's inside of brushes and then mallet, and it's this one, mallet fast. So the mallet fast is kind of like the clay buildup. As you can see, it has the square alpha as well. And the way this works is it allows you to remove surfaces from the element. But the cool thing about this one is, opposed to the clay buildup, right? With the clay buildup, if you start doing it and you don't sort of like move your pen or you don't raise your pen, it just adds more and more and more. The mallet one does not do that. Like if you do it once, it will always remain at the same sort of like depth. But the cool thing is the more you do it, the more you carve, right? So you can get this very interesting effect. Look at this. For instance, here, I can start just removing. And again, if I keep the same, like if I don't move my pen, if I remain with the same sort of like depth, I'm going to get a very sort of like nice organic erosion look here on the stone. It's also really good to do like hammer metal. I think I've used it before in some of the live streams in case you guys have seen them. But yeah, it's I really like this one. So this one I really like, especially to use it, for instance, on this like long elements to sort of like break up the uniformity of the objects a little bit, right? Because we don't want to have like a super obvious mask element right there, just like pushing through the object. So we can use this to break it up a little bit. Then we go back to our or flatten edge, for instance, to clean up some of that detail. There we go. Now, with this one, my friends, I want to teach you a very important concept, which is called rest areas. I know I've mentioned this before. I probably did mention it on the last video, but when you're doing any type of elements, you don't want to overwhelm the object with details. Like, of course, I could go and add cracks and elements pretty much everywhere, but I don't want to do that. What I need to think about are the big shapes, the medium shapes, and the small shapes of my element. So, for instance, here, I can definitely add a couple of cracks and help break up the stone a little bit more, but I want to keep this area relatively clean. Why? Because eventually we're going to be adding a little bit more, resolution, or not resolution, detail, right? Surface detail, probably in texturing. We could also, of course, sculpt it right here, but we want to keep it the area where there's not a lot of stuff happening. That way, when someone reads this whole thing, right, like he goes and observes the whole thing, it's not going to be super obvious that we have like something going on. Now, these brushes that I'm going to share with you, my friend, these are one of my secret weapons. I've been using this for more than 10 years. You can see these were posted back in May 24, 2015. These were done by Paul Tosca, but unfortunately the site where he originally uploaded, it's not as easy to get. So now this one by Simon Fuchs, I hope that's how you pronounce it, is hosting them, and you can download here through, I believe it's Mediafire. So it's all of these alphas right here. They're free to use for everyone, and they have a lot of like very cool detail that we're going to be using. So if we go here to Lightbox and we go to our brushes, I have mine right here. There we go, marble damage. So the ones that I want are this one right here, concrete detail. So I'm going to add a little bit of concrete detail here to my stone, and I'm going to go, and there's a medium damage detail, I think, that we have over on this side right here. There we go. There's like spots right here. Oh, these are so good, because as you can see, this gives us a little bit of that like tertiary detail, right? Like the small shapes that we want to add or we want to incorporate to the design while still keeping a lot of the stuff like pretty nice, pretty cool. I'm still going to go here with Trim Dynamic, for instance, and use it to sort of like erase some of those points. I don't want to have too much information. Remember that all of these points we could also add later on inside of the texturing process, right? Inside of Substance Painter. Once we have that, of course, we need to now jump to the second one and just follow the same sort of like design principle that we want to have now on this one. Be very careful with the elements or the points where things are meeting, because one of the things that we want to do is we want to make it make sense. So we don't want to start adding damage just for the sake of adding damage. We need to, you know, have a little bit of like thought behind all of this like sculpting processes. Again, I'm going to use my Ore Flatten Edge to sort of like clean some of this stuff up, play around with the damage. Let's do a little bit of that masking thing that we did before. I'm going to keep it relatively simple. Maybe this one is just going to be that corner right there. Again, just push this back. Remember, all of this is going to be baked down from the front view. So one of the things that you definitely want to do is you want to constantly be looking at this from a front view, like the one that I have right now, to evaluate like whether or not this is looking fine with this view, right? It doesn't matter what you do here. We're not going to see that. It only matters what we do right here. But if you were to change the silhouette like this, that's going to be affecting the whole thing. So we got to be very careful in maintaining or keeping some of these silhouettes a little bit cleaner than what we might expect. Again, rocks, we need hard edges. Hard edges to really indicate that they are not made out of clay. They're actually made out of minerals, marine minerals.
They're rocks, Hank.
No, they're minerals. They're minerals. It's a mineral collection.
So here again, I'm continuing. We can use the orbs cracks. That one's a really good one. Remember, one of the things that we want to have here is we want to have a very generic damage on the whole thing, because we don't want to have a specific particular type of detail, because otherwise it's just going to be very difficult to match. For instance, that one right there, the one that I added there on the top, I'm already questioning whether I want to have it or not, because it looks very obvious that that's a specific type of damage. It doesn't look as generic. So I'm probably just going to like remove it like that. There we go. That looks a little bit less generic. Now, the ore brushes, if you guys haven't used them before, they also have a very nice like alpha that we can use to give ourselves a little bit of ideas. And it's this one right here. It's called the Ore Rock Detail. That one I really like, because as you can see, it adds a little bit of like nice faceted texture to the whole thing. So it's a good way to, again, to incorporate a little bit of extra detail, extra surface detail to the whole thing without really having to sculpt every single detail. Just be very careful, because since it's the same alpha, if you use it multiple times, it might look very obvious where it is. So I'm going to use it more as sort of like an inspiration. And then from here, there might be some patterns or some interesting elements that I see. For instance, here, I like that like interesting cut. I'm just gonna carve in a little bit more, so like follow the pattern, and then again, use my Ore Flatten Edge to clean that stuff up. By the way, if you guys are using Blender, because again, I know we're gonna get those comments, then you can use most of these brushes inside of the sculpting section as well. I don't sculpt too much in Blender, to be honest, and as you guys know, you can say Blender is really good for like modeling and a lot of other things, but in sculpting, ZBrush is still king. So I prefer to do all of my sculpting here inside of ZBrush, but it is possible. Actually, I believe someone made a brush pack for the orb brushes where he transformed all of those so they're compatible with Blender, so you might want to check that one out. Very important here as well, since we're adding all of this detail from the marble damage pack, we need to be consistent with the damage on the other elements. I'm going to go back here to my marble damage. I'm going to go back to my concrete details, add a little bit more details. I might add just the details everywhere already. There we go. So we have a little bit of like those dots, and then we have some of those big spots. Let's grab this ones now, and we can add a little bit of those spots right there. Now, one of my homeworks right now is going to be to finish all of the bricks. So as you can see, we already have the beginning or the early stage of this construction here with the rocks. I need to finish all of the rocks now so that we can eventually bake them. This is going to take time. It's one of those things that you guys don't see. Here behind the scenes, we take a long time preparing all of the elements and all of the things. And it might seem like, oh, this is just a 10-minute video. Then I'm going to be able to do this in 10 minutes. No, it's going to take you a while to do. It's going to be like quite time consuming. But if you follow everything properly, then you're going to have a great result by the end. So what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to show you a couple more techniques with some of the other bricks, and then I'll come back to this ones and finish the whole like sculpting process. As you can see, it's not very difficult. It's not very technical. There's very simple tools that we can utilize to get a nice result, but it is time consuming, right? We need to start like using all of the techniques that we've learned so far, as well as the ones that you can learn from the ZBrush course, and get them into a nice result here with our stones. Now, before we continue, I know you guys are not subscribed. We have the information. So if you like these videos and you're learning, which is the most important thing, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And let's continue. So let's go, for instance, with these pieces right here, and let me show you again a couple of options that we have. First of all, we're going to increase the resolution, turn on groups, do on other groups so that every single element has its own like little object right there. This is the great thing about trim sheets, right? We're not going to have to do retopo for these things. We're not going to have to worry about creating a low poly because everything is just going to be baked down into a plane. So the low poly, it's done. It's finished for us. It's more about the high poly in this particular assets. So I'm going to just do like Dynamesh right here, and what I'm looking for is a good amount of resolution. So I'm probably going to go a little bit higher because I want to have, you know, yeah, there we go, even a little bit more, to be honest. I know this seems like, oh, that's a lot of like resolution, but believe me, we do need it. So there we go. We're a little bit above 500,000 points so far. So what I'm going to show you now is how we can use the noise modifier to give us a little bit of a base. So I'm going to go here to surface. I'm going to turn on noise. And by doing this, what we're going to get is we're going to get a little bit of noise across the whole thing. We can change the scale of the noise, and very importantly, we can change the curvature here on this thing. Look at that. So by doing this, we're able to generate a very nice, interesting variation where we might be able to, you know, get a little bit of an advantage, get some inspiration, and most importantly, get a very sort of like uniform and balanced look across the whole elements, right? So something like that. Remember that this noise is not like actually there, so we need to do this apply to mesh, and it's going to actually apply the noise. And the reason why I like using that noise is because, again, it might not solve every single issue for me, but it's going to give me some ideas, some inspiration of where I can add some of those like elements, like for instance, that part right there. Keep in mind, again, this guy right here is eventually going to be this exact same guy right here. So I don't need to do that one. I can just do this one and eventually just place it exactly where it needs to be. Don't forget to use the trim dynamic and the effects that we talked about. Not every single corner needs to be like metal edge weird and damage. You're going to have a balance between primary forms, secondary forms, and tertiary details or tertiary forms. Clean off some of these elements, right? Like we don't need to have this like interesting noisy pattern everywhere. We can have a little bit of variation and just have fun. Have fun like adding and destroying your rocks right here. Sculpting rocks is one of those things that I really enjoy. I find that it's very sort of like relaxing. Yes, it's a little bit tedious because you need to do a lot of it for pretty much every surface. But once you find your workflow, once you have your brushes set up, once you have your general idea and your general attack plan, then it becomes very, very fun and relatively easy. So now what I'm going to do, my friends, is I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to stop the recording, of course, and I'll see you back when I have all of the information ready for these elements. So this is my final result, my friends. This is the last part of the sculpt. Let me show you a couple of things. So first of all, one thing that you're going to be able to tell, and this is a Zbrush feature, is that when you have a subtool selected, all of the other subtools become like this darker color. If you don't want this, if you want to be able to appreciate everything at the same time, easiest thing you can do is just go to Preferences and then go here to Edit. And in the Edit menu, you're going to find this option that says Inactive Subtool Dimming. If you bring this all the way to the top, as you can see, you're not going to see any difference on the elements. It's going to be difficult to tell which subtool is the current active subtool, but you're going to be able to see everything with the same sort of like color. Now, a little test that I like to do before we jump into Maya and organize this thing a little bit better for the baking process is to go to any of these ones and just duplicate the whole thing, right? Tile it, and check whether or not it's easy to identify that this thing is a tileable texture. And yes, for instance, we have a couple of cracks there that are quite obvious, right? But if you're walking, you know, down the level or you're just going around, you're probably not going to be able to notice that kind of stuff. If you do feel that some of the elements are a little bit too identifiable, this is a good point or a good moment to just start like removing them, right? Like just clean them up and get them to where they need to be. As you can see, I deleted some of the elements. So for instance, this one right here, I deleted it because we're going to be eventually duplicate it and have it in the exact same position. That way we wouldn't have to do extra work. Same for this one. I deleted this one, which is the exact same as this one right here. So now the only thing that we need to do is bring this into Maya and prepare the high poly. Now, one of the things that we of course need to do is we need to decimate this. Right now we're at 7.5 million points for all of these things. So that's like 14 million polygons. That's way too much. I'm going to go to C plugin, Decimation Master. I'm going to do pre-process all. This is very important. Pre-process all. So it's going to go through all of the subtools. Very important. Your subtools need to have a different name. If you have two subtools that are named the same, this is not going to work. So in this case, that shouldn't be the issue. So I'm just going to go through all of them right here. And once this is done, I'm going to decimate probably to like a 10%. I don't think we need more than that. It's a very sort of like organic looking shape. So 10% should be more than enough. This will take a while because it needs to go through every single subtool. Right now we have 8 subtools, so it's pretty much doing the decimation process for every single one of those. I've used this before for one of the characters, if you remember the Oni, right? Like I prepared it for 3D print and I did this decimation process. It took my computer like 30 minutes to do like all of the decimation. But you need to do that, otherwise the softwares cannot handle that many polygons. Now that we have this, we go C plugin and we're gonna say 10% decimation, decimate all. It's going to go through all of the subtools. It's going to set every single one of those to 10% of the decimated amount. And there we go. Control N. Let's take a quick look. There we go. So as you can see, pretty much all of the detail is going to be there. We're not going to be able to tell that anything happened to this, like it blocks right here, and we're ready to move on to the next section. The next thing is, of course, going to C plugin, and I'm going to go to FBX export import, export all, bin, very important, and then export. The reason why we need to do bin is because ASCII doesn't work with all of the software, so bin it's more safe. Now let's jump to Maya. So I'm opening the old trim files, and this is very important because there might be some elements that we're going to have a little bit of an issue finding the exact pivot point, and we're going to use the old elements, the old low polys, to help us with that, okay? So I'm going to go here, of course, and we're going to bring in our trim decimated. There we go. So as you can see, we have all of the elements right where they need to be. Now, the first row, this one right here, that's not an issue because if you remember, if we take a look at our original plane, this one right here, the only thing we need to do is we need to move this point right here, this block right here, to this area right here, okay? Now, as I mentioned, the problem is that the pivot point of this thing right here is going to be difficult to use. We were using snapping. Remember how we snapped that guy to the border of the element? And this one, of course, well, now a complete mesh. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate the whole high poly there. I'm going to select the faces there and shift select everything right there. By the way, there's multiple options to do this. This is just a very simple way that I like to use to explain how this whole thing works. So if I grab these two elements right now, you're going to see that we have pcube1 right here and we have trim8 right here. So I'm going to grab trim8 first, grab pcube there and just hit P. That's going to parent it. So now, as you can see, trim8 lives inside of pcube1. I can grab pcube1, duplicate that one, and now as you can see, the pivot point is going to match. So the only thing I need to do is move this thing and snap it right there. So now I'm completely sure that all of the trims right here are perfectly aligned. Let's turn this option on so that we can actually see the material. That the decimated one, well, this one's work quite clean. As you can see, there's not much going, just a little bit of silhouette. We're gonna add a little bit more texture on this one. And actually, I forgot to mention that, but when I was planning these things, I wanted the top elements to be, you know, a little bit less intense than the bottom ones, so that we have, again, more variation to work with. So now that I have all of the decimated versions right here, what I want to do is I want to combine them, and I'm gonna call this trim A. Once we have this trim A, remember how we had this fake trim on top of it so that we could get like a little bit of a nicer ambient occlusion? Well, we still need to do that. So I'm gonna grab this trim A that we have right here, Control D, and just push this up. Again, remember that that's gonna be helpful for like a little bit of a more realistic ambient occlusion for the whole thing. Same process over here. We have this guy right here. I'm gonna do the process one more time, and I'm actually gonna do it with this guys right here so that you guys can see how we approach this. So if you remember, we grabbed all of this guys right here. This is the low poly version, and this is the plane, right, that we have on the back. So as you can see, if I grab all of this guys, the pivot point of this guys is aligned to the same position, which is great. That's what I want. I actually just need one. I don't need any of the other ones. So technically, we could just delete all of the other ones. Oh, this is very interesting. For some reason, as you can see, the decimated version of this guys right here did not come through. Why? Oh, I already know why. Because here inside of Zbrush, as you can see, this is named Polysurface 12. That's bad. Bad. Why? I'm gonna just call this trim 99. There you go. The reason why this didn't work is because there was already an object inside of Maya named Polysurface 2 or whatever. So when we brought in the high poly, it was like, no, that shape already exists here. I'm not going to do anything, and that's why it ignored it. So let's just export this one real quick. We bring in trim 99, and there you go. Now it works. So this is what I'm going to do. Again, we just duplicate that whole thing, grab all of these faces right here, shift select everything, delete. We're going to be left with this thing right here. Grab this thing, shift select the parent. There we go, parent it there. Grab the parent again, Control D, and since the pivot point of the parent is perfectly aligned, we just need to position it right there. So now this is perfectly going to match with the other tools. So let me quickly do all of that setup for all of the pieces that I'm still missing, and then I'll show you one last thing we need to do before we send this to bakes. I was going through the motions here to finalize this thing, and I realized something. It's like, oh, we have a little bit of an issue here. This piece right here, this trim that I did right here is actually not aligned. Ooh, forgot to align this to the grid. And as you can see, I could definitely just duplicate this thing and guesstimate where this other one is, but there's an easier way. So first of all, we do the exact same thing. We grab our trim right here, the duplicated trim, and we parent it to the top trim right there. There we go. So now this low poly trim that has the pivot point on the center is where it needs to be. What I need now is I need a way to make sure that this trim right here, again, this low poly trim, moves to the exact same position of this one right here. And that, my friends, is where we use constraints. I'm going to grab the driver right here, which is where I want things to go. And I'm going to grab the driven right here, which is this one right here. Again, the low poly version. I'm going to go to rigging, constraint. We're going to do a point constraint without maintain offset. I'm going to say apply, and boom. What that will do, as you can see, is it will make the driven, right, the second piece that I selected, to jump to the exact position of where the first piece that I selected is. Constraints are really, really powerful, and this is a perfect example of why. Now, in order to properly have this where I need it to be, there's a couple of more things that I need to do. First of all, once the constraint has been done, we can actually delete it from the element. We grab this thing, and if we press Shift P, it should be in the exact same position. Remember to freeze transformations as well, because otherwise there could be a couple of issues there. Now, all of the old low polys, we don't need them anymore. Those were just like the basic construction that we had, and there we go. And there we go, my friends. As you can see now, our trim is working perfectly fine. If we go to the front view, this is the plane that we're using. And as you can see, we're covering all of the elements and things are tiling perfectly fine. So again, we go just to the borders, make sure that everything is crossing or going across that border. And that's it. We're good. Now, the one thing that I want to do here, and this is going to make it a lot easier for us in the baking process, is I want to create a little bit of a mask. We are going to be creating something called an ID mask. We've also done videos about that. If you're looking for a video, it's most probably here on the channel. If it's not, you can let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to make one for you, my friends. That's why you don't want to miss and subscribe to the channel, right? So that you get first access to all of the videos. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be using an ID mask, or I'm going to be creating an ID mask. First of all, let's get rid of any geometry, like all of those low polys that we're no longer going to need. This is, of course, going to uncover or sort of like discover that there's going to be gaps in my elements, right? Like there's going to be parts here that we're not going to see. So it's very important that we export this big plane as well, this big cube, because this is going to allow us to bake some of the shadows that we have there on the background. Eventually, we're going to just use a basic texture instead of substance to cover that whole thing. So I'm going to grab all of this guys right here, for instance, and I'm going to assign a new material, a basic Lambert material, and I'm just going to give it any random basic color, like this red one right here. Let's click on this so that we can actually see them. There we go. So what we want to do here is we want to create a color selection for every single trim. Now, eventually, if we want to have multiple trims be made out of gold, for instance, or have a specific material, we can select multiple of this ID masks. So you don't have to have all of them be the exact same material. If you're going to have multiple pieces that are going to be gold, again, later on, we can change that. So I'm going to grab this one's right here, just assign existing material. There's multiple ways of doing this, by the way. Some people like using materials, some people like using poly paint or color points. It really doesn't matter. What matters though is that all of them have the exact same material. So for instance here, there we go. We have it duplicated right there. Now, don't worry if you run out of colors. A very common question I get is, oh, I'm using all of these very bright, pure colors, and now I don't have any more. Don't worry. As long as the color is like different enough, the softwares will be able to catch it. Sometimes even just like a couple of like hues and values away, and you're not going to have any issue. For instance, this lower colors right here, I'm just using like an orange and like a teal. That's fine. Very important. The block here that we're also using does need a material. So let's just that one right there. These pieces right here, they don't need a material. Why not? Because they're outside of the grid, so we're not going to have any issues. Now we grab everything right here and we export this as our high poly for our trim sheet. So we're going to set this at 2K again, bring our trim sheet, which is just a plane. If you remember, we haven't done anything on the low poly. It's just a very super basic plane. Load in our new high poly, push the max frontal distance quite a bit so that we catch everything, punch the max rear distance as well, change the anti-aliasing to something like 16x, and boom. Take a look. Look at this beauty right here. Not freaking bad, right? Look at all the beautiful detail that we were able to bring in. Now we're going to be doing the texturing in another video, my friends. I wanted to keep everything in sort of like a compact version, but there's still a lot of stuff that I want to teach, and I don't want to rush it. And I know a lot of you guys, unfortunately, I'm not calling you out because you're here, but a lot of people will only watch like the first half of the video and sort of like scroll through it. So if you're here, thank you. And we're going to keep the texturing and the setup for the next stage, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to use the old gold that we had, and this is where we can use the ID mask. Add a black mask, right click, add color selection, pick a color, and there we go. So very, very easily we can pick as many colors as we want and select the patterns or the elements that we want to be using, well, this gold material. Let's add, of course, a little rust. That one always helps just to visualize how things are looking. And why not throw in a quick metal edgeware? I'm gonna go with like a light green metal edgeware, something like this. I'm gonna set this to linear dodge so that it's very intense effect, and of course I'm gonna lower the intensity of the whole thing. There we go. So as you can see, my friends, now we are actually seeing a high quality trim sheet here inside of Substance Painter. We can still do more stuff, and that's why I want to talk about this in the texturing department. We're gonna like add a little bit more variation, just make sure that this tiles very, very nicely. But before we go, I want to show you a very quick little trick that we can do now that we have the bakes and everything ready, so that we can visualize this thing while we're texturing. So it's gonna be like a little bit of a sneak peek on what we're gonna be doing next time. I'm gonna go back to Maya. I'm gonna set up my plane the way that we set it up before. 200 on the scale. Rotate this so that it's facing forward. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this thing and snap it so that it snaps perfectly to the next one. Duplicate again and snap it to the next one. So as you can see now, we have a big wall, right? Like a big wall of the trim sheet. I'm gonna export this selection. I'm gonna call this trim wall. And then if we go back to substance, I can go to edit, project configuration, and we're gonna select that wall that we have now, trim wall, and hit open. And since it's using the exact same UVs, when we bring this in and we apply the bakes that we just did, there we go. We're gonna be able to visualize perfectly how everything is moving, right? So here's where we're gonna be able to tell, oh, you know what? Like there's a couple of spots or a couple of elements where things are looking a little bit too intense or a little bit not as intense as we want. So this is where we change it. But look at this. Like again, you can imagine this is gonna be a wall in temple. We're just like going through the whole temple, and this is what we're gonna be seeing. So not bad, right? Not freaking bad. I'm gonna stop the video right here, guys. Thank you very much if you watched until this very end, last part of the video. Hopefully you learned a lot on the sculpting side of things, the organization side of things, and now, well, I want to see what you guys can come up with your own trim sheets. Next video and the final part of this series is going to be, of course, how we export this, how we get it into Unreal, and how we actually use it. How are we gonna map all of the different elements in a small little prop so that we can utilize all of the advantages of this very nice trim sheet. That's it for now, my friends. Thank you very much, and don't forget, always learning, always improving. Bye-bye.